And usually this time of year I start getting some pretty serious munching pressure on my sweet tater leaves. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a wonderful day. It is Friday, July 12th here in South Georgia, and it's been a little while since I've shown y'all what's going on here in our raised bed plot behind me. So today we're going to take a look at what's growing in there, and I'm going to show you how you can still have a beautiful garden in the middle of July when it's really hot outside. You just got to know what to be growing. So we've had a ton of rain in the last week. Weeds are popping up everywhere. Grass needs cutting again. Some plants are looking kind of rough. So it has definitely impacted some things in the in-ground plots, but not so much over here in the raised bed plot because this soil drains so much better. So let's walk around here and see what we've got going on in each of these beds. We'll start out with these round beds here. And in this first one, we have some beautiful basil here. I can't remember if I showed y'all when we put these transplants in the ground, but man, they look pretty dang pitiful because I left them in the greenhouse too long. Threw a bunch of coop grow at this basil here, and it ended up looking really nice. So as you can see there, we need to get busy harvesting some basil and making some pesto. Now, I don't think I've ever grown a hybrid variety of basil before, but this particular variety behind me here is called Prospera. It's a hybrid basil variety, and it has downy mildew resistance. It seems to be doing really well for us here. Seems a little slower to go to seed, although we are getting some seed heads now. Not a big issue on basil. We'll cut them off and it keeps growing. But you may want to give Prospera a try if you struggle with some of the open pollinated basil varieties. And this is just another perfect example. We show y'all this all the time, how you can take some really sorry looking transplants and transform them into some beautiful productive plants just by feeding them well. And then these next two round beds, we've got some beautiful zinnias growing here, and these things have gotten really tall lately. Some of them 5.5, 6 foot tall, almost as tall as I am. Got all kind of different colors planted in here. I can't remember the names of all these different shades of red here. There's coral, carmine rose, and a few others, and then there's also some white and lime mixed in there as well. Might be more white and lime in that bed than there is this bed here. So we've been continuing to feed these zinnias every 2 to 3 weeks with some coop grow or agri-thrive, whatever I've got in the back of my buggy. I've given them a little bit of both. So you can keep these zinnias looking really nice through the summer. If you keep feeding them, obviously keep watering them, and then also pruning them back. These right here are due for a pruning. I usually come in here once every 2 to 3 weeks, cut all the blooms off, prune them back good, and then another couple weeks, they look like this again. And if you didn't know, butterflies love zinnias. There's one right there zipping around. And then in our last round raised bed here, we've got some more flowers. Some of my favorite to grow in the middle of summer, these giant marigolds here. These things always do well for us, and they look really pretty. About time to prune these things back. You do have to keep pruning them, keep cutting off those blooms to get continual production from these. But I've been growing these for several years now. Couldn't be happier with them. Got several different varieties in here. We've got the giant yellow. I think we've got some white swan in there. There's maybe 1 or 2 other varieties. I can't remember what all I planted, but nothing prettier than a big bed of marigolds like this. Then starting on our second row here with these long skinny beds, we've got these Egyptian walking onions that we've had in this bed a long time. We planted these, I think, late last summer. They're looking pretty good right now. I have still yet to see the little bulbils on top that make these things walk. I don't really know how long it takes to get those. They have multiplied a bunch down here, as you can see, but no bulbils on top. So we've gotten a lot of green onion tops from those, just no walking yet. Now, we had somebody comment on a video a few weeks back saying that they heard it takes 2 years for them to form the little bulbils and start walking. I tried to look this up online. Maybe I wasn't typing in the right search terms, but I couldn't find anything out there. So if you know how long it's supposed to take these things to start walking, definitely let me know. And then in these next two beds, we've got sweet taters, that vineless bunch Puerto Rico variety. And usually this time of year, I start getting some pretty serious munching pressure on my sweet tater leaves, but it hasn't gotten that bad yet. You can see we've got some holes in those leaves, but not bad at all. Nothing worth spraying yet. These are looking really, really pretty. So as I've told you and showed you before, these vineless sweet tater varieties do still crawl a little bit, not near as much as traditional sweet tater varieties. If we had something like Georgia Jet or Orleans planted in here, those vines would probably end up taking up this entire plot. So these will spill over the bed, but they won't take over everything. Now I can't remember exactly when I planted these, so not sure how much longer they've got left. If I had to guess, I'd say we're about halfway there. So they will end up filling a decent amount of that gap there between the beds, but they won't crawl into another bed like a traditional sweet tater variety would do. So they're going to cover these pathways a little bit, but not too much. Now in this next row of beds, we've got mostly maters and some peppers. Keep in mind what I told you earlier, pretty much every day this week it has rained, a lot of rain, and when you get those hot, humid, moist conditions, maters really don't like that a lot. So some of these maters aren't looking that great right now. Hasn't really bothered the peppers a whole lot, but some of our maters are struggling a little bit. So this right here might be the worst looking bed in our entire raised bed plot. We've got these Torringina cherry tomatoes here. You can see they're loaded up there. We need to harvest again. Hadn't been able to really do any harvesting this week with all the rain, but they're loaded up. Some of them did split because we had so much rain. The bottom parts of those plants don't look that great, but the top looks pretty good. Looks like still wanting to grow there. So I may come in here and do some pruning and try to push those main stems down a little bit and kind of move that plant around a little bit, and hopefully we'll still get some production from the top there. And over here on the back side of those tomato plants, we got some collards that have not been a fan of how hot it's been lately. I have seen these flash collards make it through the summer, but they're not going to make it through the summer this year. That one there is toast, and that one there probably ain't far behind it. And then in our next bed, we've got some absolutely beautiful pepper plants that need to be harvested. Also probably need to run another line or two of string for our Florida weave trellis. In between these peppers, I'll show you these real quick, like then we'll take a look at some of the individual pepper varieties. We've got some ageratum plants here. I started out with some sunflower transplants. Once those bloomed out, I just came here and clipped those at soil level, had some ageratum transplants ready to go, stuck them in here, and they're starting to take off now. So let's take a look at some of these pepper varieties. We've got some serranos here that are absolutely loaded. I've been eating a bunch of these, but I can't hardly keep up with them. I do like to leave some of them on there and turn red. Those red serranos there make some of the best hot pepper sauce for some collard greens. Just put those in a jar with some vinegar and let them marinate. Man, you're talking about some good stuff. And then next to those, we've got one of our favorite peppers, the Santa Fe Grand type here. Now this year I planted a hybrid called Havasu as opposed to the open pollinated version that I've been growing for years. And the hybrid does seem to be maybe just a hair bit more productive and give us some slightly larger fruits. Now one thing I've noticed about these this year, and I don't know whether it's a variety thing or an environmental thing, but they don't seem to be as hot as they normally are. On the 4th of July, I wrapped a ton of these in bacon, stuffed them with cream cheese, threw them on the grill, and man, they were absolutely delicious. Usually Brooklyn won't eat these because they're too hot for her, but they weren't really hot at all. I always scrape out the seeds in the membrane, but they've had virtually zero heat on them. Could be because we've gotten so much water. I know frequent watering or heavy watering can cause peppers to not be as hot, but it could be a variety thing as well. Either way, really good citrusy flavor on these right here, delicious on the grill. And then on the end of those two short pepper rows, we've got these Italian hot peppers, which need to be harvested. I usually like to wait and let these things turn red so they're full flavor. Took them a while to get there, but we've got loads of them now. Then back over here at the front of that other row, we've got our King Arthur bell pepper plants. Something's wrong with that plant there. Might need to shoot the juice to it, see if I can get it back going. This other plant's looking really good. Not a lot of peppers on these because I just picked them clean a couple days ago. We've been eating a ton of these, but King Arthur is performing reliably for me like it always does. Been getting some huge bell peppers off these. There's one there that's starting to get pretty decent size. And then lastly, the one I've probably been the most impressed with in here, and that's probably because I've never grown it before, is this barren poblano pepper. Man, this plant is just loaded up. We've been picking these, but they just keep coming, and they make some huge poblano peppers. So I picked a few of these just so I could show you the size. That one there got scun up by the sun a little bit. We can still use the bottom half of that. Most of these are as big as your hand or close to as big as your hand. Really nice size on these. They make a great stuffing pepper. So highly recommend this barren variety here. We actually have seeds for this variety and that King Arthur bell on our website if you think you can squeeze in another pepper planting. But I couldn't be happier with what I've seen from this variety so far. And then in our next bed, we've got more tomatoes. We'll start out on this side where we've got these Everglades cherry tomatoes. I know a lot of people have grown these before, but I had never grown them. These plants just keep sprawling like crazy. Some of the bottoms on these plants starting to look a little rough, and the fruit production kind of snuck up on me a little bit. But you can see we're starting to get some in there. And these aren't huge. They're actually fairly tiny compared to most cherry tomatoes. But these little nuggets are quite tasty. Really, really good. You just have to eat a bunch of them to get full. And then over here on the other side of those Everglades plants, we've got our purple GMO tomatoes. And surprisingly, these things actually look better than the Everglades do. Still no ripe fruits yet, although they're starting to size up a little bit. These things don't get very big. A little bit bigger than your standard cherry tomato, I believe. We've got lots of fruit in there and still getting tons of blooms up top. So these things are doing a lot better than I expected them to do. Now let's go down this back row of these taller beds, and in this first one here, I've got some parsnips I can't get rid of. So last fall, we planted about 9 or 10 different varieties of perennial onions from all over the world in this bed here. And as you can see, some of them made it, some of them didn't make it. Had a lot to do with the fact that this winter and this spring, those parsnips just kind of swallowed them up. Those things were about 3 or 4 foot tall, just huge, and covered this entire bed. Now those parsnips obviously aren't that tall now because I recently cut them back to soil level. So what happened was, when those parsnips were due to be harvested, I couldn't pull them up. I did get one of them pulled up, and the dang thing was as long as that bed is tall there. I guess they just really liked what was in that soil. So they grew so deep that I couldn't pull them up. And so I just left them there, and I realized they were swallowing up my onions, so I just cut them back to soil level, thinking maybe that would exterminate them, but as you can see, that didn't work. So I cut them down to soil level about a week and a half ago, and as you can see, they've already put on a ton of new foliage. I don't know how I'm going to get rid of these things. I can't pull them up. I guess I could dig them up. I really don't want to do that. Got any ideas on how I could get rid of these parsnips here? I'm pretty sure they're too big to be harvested. They're way down there, halfway to China. I don't know what to do. Moving along here, we've got some darker boar kale still sticking around a little bit in this bed. Some of these plants are toast. A couple of them are still producing. I doubt these things make it through August. Don't really have anything else in this bed at this point. So pretty soon I may scrap those kale plants and we'll figure out something to plant over this entire bed. And then lastly, we've got our dwarf cowhorn okra in this bed, and it's looking pretty good. Have had a little bit of bug pressure on this, not enough to warrant spraying. The leaves look nice and green, and this stuff is starting to get kind of bushy like this variety tends to do. And so I thinned these out a while back to just 6 plants for this bed because I know that's going to be plenty for this small space. Once these things grow a little bit more, they'll get even more bushy and they'll take over this entire bed. Now we have had a few people message us saying their dwarf cowhorn okra was a little slow to get going, and I would say last year mine may have been a little slow to get going, but then it took off and was super productive for us. For some reason this year in this raised bed here, man, this stuff germinated fast and got going really fast. Hoping to see some okra flowers pretty soon. So the moral of the story is, yes, you can still have a beautiful and productive garden when it's blazing hot outside. You just got to know what to be growing. You need to be growing heat-loving crops. Basil works really good, sweet taters, those perennial onions, peppers, and even okra. Grow the things that love the heat when it's the hottest. And remember, don't stop believing and don't stop the feeding. You got to keep feeding these plants throughout the summer so they can kind of push through some of these environmental extremes. Keep them well watered, keep feeding them, and they'll reward you. So I hope you enjoyed the video today, and if you want to learn more about our irrigation system that we use in this raised bed plot here, how we have it all connected together, watch this video right here when we installed everything. We'll show you how we put everything together to make it really easy. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.